Right, okay. Stand up. Come on. It's the end of the day. I need to wake you up. Right, okay. So, sit down if you've ever built an iOS app for fun. Okay, a few, not very many. Sit down if you've ever built any kind of app for fun. A few more. Ooh, cool. Loads of you. Okay, sit down if you've ever just written software for fun. A few more. I'm sorry all you people are standing up. Sit down if you've ever made anything, just for fun. Okay, if you're still standing up, just sit down. It's fine, don't worry about it. Okay, so I have a story to tell. This is Squarefill, and this is Wordlessly. They are both iOS apps, and they are not on the App Store. My story is a true story. It often made me sad. I cried a few times, really, I did. But I'm going to tell you about how my experience consolidated a lot of useful stuff I know about software delivery. So I'm going to use this story as a vehicle to share a bunch of useful stuff. And although it is a sad story, ultimately, I bring you a message of hope. Okay, so before I go any further, here's a little puzzle. Every emoji you see on the screen represents a letter, and every line is a word. And together, those words make a common phrase. Hearts are vowels, including Y. So there are 6 possible vowels, and that is enough for you to work out what that phrase is. So there's enough of you that hopefully by the end of the talk, one of you might have been able to work out. I'm sorry, but whoever that is probably going to not listen to anything else. I'd say for the next half an hour. But it is workable, outable. Right, okay. So, the story. In December 2021, I was working on this iOS app, Squarefill. It was a hobby. I am a professional software engineer. I've never been a professional mobile software engineer. So, it was a hobby. It was a puzzle game. It is a puzzle game. I like puzzle games. I've got tons of them on my phone. In December 2021, I had been working on it already for 5 years. And I decided it was time to actually try and get it onto the App Store instead of just on my phone. But I had no idea how. And I thought, I need to work out how it works, because I understood it wasn't simple. So I thought, I need something I can use to test the process of trying to get an app onto the App Store. I need like an App Store guinea pig. And I thought, this Wordle game seems really simple. But I wanted to play more than one game a day. And on the official Wordle app, you only get to play one a day. So I thought I could probably make a version of Wordle, like a really simple version. You won't be able to share the results of your game. You won't get any stats, just unlimited games, which is actually simpler than trying to throttle it to one a day. So just an app that lets you play Wordle. If you don't know how Wordle works, I will explain later, don't worry, but probably a high proportion of you do. I thought I could knock that up in a week or two. Famous last words. But 1 month later, I did have a bare bones version of the Wordle game, like really, really simple and basic, but you could play Wordle. Right, okay, time to get it onto the App Store. Hang on a minute. I'd like to introduce Alice. Hello, Alice. Hello, Claire. Okay, she's not real. She's fictional. Imagine her as supportive but gently challenging. Okay. Hello, Alice. So, Claire, you made a fully functioning game? Yeah. But what about MMMSS? Okay, so MMMSS. Many more much smaller steps. This is a fantastic idea. The idea of working in small steps is not new, but G. Paul Hill has got a really, really good way of describing it, and he uses this phrase. Well, to be fair to me, I had been moving in tiny steps. I'd been using test-driven development, and I had actually been continuously integrating the code that I was writing with the main code base. But I hadn't been doing continuous delivery. I hadn't been moving in tiny steps and getting each tiny version and tiny advance in front of users, because I couldn't work out a way of doing it. And I'm not sure there is an easy way of doing continuous delivery when you're doing iOS App Store development. So no, I wasn't doing that. Remember, what I'm trying to do is get it released on the App Store. It took me another month to get it releasable, because in order to get something actually onto the App Store, you have to have a help page. You have to have some form of support available. You have to give users the opportunity to give feedback. All of the UI components have to conform to Apple guidelines. You need an end-user license agreement. And I had decided that I wanted in-app purchases, because I thought if I'm doing all this work, I may as well monetize it. But I didn't want people to be forced to buy the game. So I thought, you can have the game for free. You can get 5 games a day for free. If you want more than 5 games a day, that will be an in-app purchase. But guess what? In-app purchases, pain in the ass. But never mind. Month later, I'd done all of that stuff. Oh, hang on a minute. Which way? Where's Claire again? I'm Alice. Right. Okay, Claire. What about a walking skeleton? Why didn't you do all this stuff first? Yeah, okay. So, walking skeleton. The idea of a walking skeleton is that you have a Hello World app that does nothing, but the very first thing you do is you deploy that, and then you can test your deployment pipeline, and then you know that you can get things in front of users. I did not do that. I'm pretty sure it's not actually possible in iOS development. I don't think you can deploy an app to the App Store that does nothing. But, I mean, I didn't even try, to be honest. It would have been a great start, and I did just get a bit carried away with making a Wordle game. But never mind. February 2022, so 2 months after I started on this journey, I was ready to release. I pressed the big button in the App Store, and I waited about 24 hours, I reckon, which might not sound long, but it's a long time in software development. And then I got the email, and it was rejected. This app appears to be misrepresenting itself as another popular app or game already available on the App Store. Now, you're all going to be thinking at this point, well, Claire, come on. You made a game that already existed. I mean, what did you think was going to happen? But there were lots of Wordle clones on the App Store. I checked this. It wasn't trademarked. Anybody could make a Wordle game if they wanted, and many people already had. So I thought that it would be okay, but apparently not. Okay. So, Claire. Yes, Alice, you've noticed we've got the same voice. We're twins. Why did you start making another app? Why didn't you just stay with the simplest version of the first app that you made? Because remember, there was another app at the beginning of this talk. Oh, you mean like minimum viable product? Yeah, okay. But my first app that I'd spent 5 years making was already way beyond minimum viable product. I'd spent 5 years on it. It had all the bells and whistles. And actually, rather than try to scale it back to a minimum simple thing, it seemed easy to start again from scratch with a new simple thing. You can argue about whether that was a good idea. But anyway, copycat. Yeah, I mean, busted. Yeah, there's loads of apps on the store that look a lot like this. So at this point, you think, well, okay, it was a stupid idea. The only reason I ever started this project was because I wanted to test App Store deployment, because I wanted to get my other app onto the App Store. This isn't working. So, you know what? It's not going to work. But I'd done all that work already, and I had an idea. So, okay, this I will now explain. For those that don't play Wordle, when you play Wordle, what you're trying to do is guess a 5-letter word. And in this particular example, the 5-letter word that they were trying to guess was the word circa. Every time you guess, so they've made 5 guesses. Each row represents a guess. Every time you guess, like Mastermind, if you remember that old game, you are given feedback on your guesses. And you can tell that this person had every single one of their guesses began with the letter C, because the green square at the beginning is telling you it's the right letter in the right place. But the yellow squares are telling you you've got a right letter, but it's in the wrong place. Now, whenever people share these, I always start thinking, particularly by this time, I've probably already played that day's game of Wordle. So I'm thinking, I know what the answer is, but I don't know what your first guess was or your second guess, and I'm intrigued. I think maybe your first guess could have been crane. And then maybe you'll say, oh, wait, hang on, if your second guess was that, then your first guess couldn't, and then your third, oh, wait a minute, hang on, what did I think your first guess was? And I'm trying to keep track of my guesses about their guesses. Wouldn't it be great if there was an app that let you guess people's guesses? So this is an app where you try and guess. So you load up the Unicode that somebody else has shared as a result of their game, and you try and guess what their guesses was. Now, I've added an extra special thing in here that allows the original player to tell the app what their actual guesses were, so the app knows. And here, I've tried to guess what their first guess might have been, and I've guessed that it might have been carve. And the little rectangles under the letters are telling me whether my guesses about their guesses were correct or not. Okay? So, blue little rectangle says your guess about their guess is the wrong letter, right letter, but in the wrong place. Okay? Great idea! So, 2 months later, in April, I'd invented a whole new game and I had loads of fun, and I'd even applied for a trademark. And I submitted it because this is not a copycat. This is a brand new game. I've invented this. Press the big button, wait 24 hours. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm excited. It was rejected. They said that they couldn't find my in-app purchases and they couldn't find my end-user license agreement. But I'd added detailed notes in telling them exactly how all of it worked. But it was annoying, but they weren't saying anything about copycat. So at least I'd got over that hurdle. So anyway, Claire, you pivoted. Yes. I invented a whole brand new game. Go me. Okay, but it was still rejected. But this is just communication. I just need to explain to them how to find the in-app purchases and how to find the end-user license agreement, and then it'll all be fine. So I replied to their rejection with detailed instructions. I hit the button again. They replied to me 24 hours later saying, in-app purchases don't work. And we can't find the end-user license agreement. This happened 3 times. I kept telling them how to find the end-user license agreement. They kept suggesting I didn't have one. I did have one. Sometimes I'd be real polite and I would say, it would be very helpful if you could explain what else I need to do. Sometimes my replies, because I just kept replying back to, I can't find the license agreement. Sometimes my replies would be really frustrated. Why does the link to the end-user license agreement in my app description not meet your requirements? And then finally, they said, we are unable to locate a functional link to the end-user license agreement. Specifically, the US English locale is missing this link. Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten that I had 2 locales, US English and UK English. Fair enough, but they could have told me that 4 rejections ago. This is nothing. There is a lot more of this story to go. Duck! Right, okay, so the reason I just told you to duck was because when I was practicing this talk, I had written out prompt cards from the previous time that I'd done it, and it was a while since I'd done it, and I have the memory of a flea. So I turned a piece of paper over, and in big capital letters on this piece of paper, it said, duck! And I did. And then I thought, what? I thought maybe it was like a message from the future. It was like a Doctor Who episode that the future me knew that something was about to hit me in the head. But no, that's not what it was. It was because I'd been at a talk at another event where Holly Cummins had said that ducks are inherently funny, and this story was all getting a bit depressing, so I thought I'd add some light relief. And at a different event, I added in a picture of a duck, but then I forgot that I'd done that. There you go, a dog. Okay, right. So, I was having various problems. In-app purchases, end-user license agreement. Apparently there were some problems with crowded screens. That turned out to be one button on one screen on one device that had one letter that didn't fit on the button. But they didn't tell me that. Occasionally they would say things like, your app exhibited 1 or more bugs. Well, that's useful. And then they would say things like, To resolve this issue, it would be appropriate, yes, tell me what to do. It would be appropriate to revise the app. And I couldn't find a way of testing in-app purchases. So they would tell me that there was a problem with it. They wouldn't tell me what the problem was. I couldn't test it. So I was flying completely blind. Claire. Yes, Alice. What about testing, Claire? Well, okay, I did have unit tests. I was doing test-driven development. I actually had quite a good suite of unit tests, but I wasn't testing in-app purchases at all. I couldn't work out how. Eventually, I did find a way of manual testing, and that helped. And then it seemed to work. I mean, they stopped telling me that there was a bug, so I don't know. So anyway, I fixed a bunch of things. I changed a bunch of things. This was a lot of back and fro that I'm not telling you about because it gets a bit dull after a while. But finally, I submitted again, this time thinking surely everything was working, everything was fine, it was all going to be absolutely fine. And they said, rejected, copycat, content that resembles Wordle. Well, what did they mean? Somebody told me that it was possible to actually speak to a human being. So I requested a call, and I did. I spoke to a real, actual human being. Pretty sure it wasn't an AI. And they said there wasn't a problem with the gameplay. It was just the look and feel. So, 3 months later, mid-August 2022, my 6th submission, but actually it was more than that because each individual submission had back and forth with rejections and trying again. But anyway, exciting, shiny new look and feel. Now, you've already seen this. You haven't seen the earlier versions, but this was the exciting, shiny new look and feel. I was very excited about my pink sweet wrapper thing and my blue thing at the top, and my buttons were round instead of square, and the go button was in a different place, and I thought that looked different enough from Wordle. And I was quite excited about it as well. So I submitted it again. They said, copycat, your app still leverages the popularity of the Wordle game. Yes, it does. Clearly, it does. The only reason anybody would want to play this game is because people are playing Wordle. August 22, 8 months after I started on this journey, it's the end. And this was when I did actually cry. Honestly, I was really quite miserable. In fact, I was deeply depressed. I'd worked really, really hard on this. I was so pleased with my new look and feel. It still makes me happy to look at it. I love those colours. And I was so looking forward to having people see it and use it and play with it. And I thought I'd prepared myself for the possibility of another failure. But no, I was miserable. The goalposts kept moving. I was talking into a void. There were no proper communications. I was subject to the whim of a faceless corporation. Disaster. I was going to talk about the sunk cost fallacy, but I'm running out of time, so I'm going to move on. I thought that I had to continue because I'd put so much work into it. I couldn't possibly not. And that was the last submission, but is it the end of the story? I was really depressed. But then I had a new plan. I do love a good plan. I thought, I've got to get something out of all this work. So I thought maybe I could get some beta testers. It's possible to have up to 100 beta testers who can use your app without it ever getting onto the App Store. So I thought then I could at least have 100 users. That would be something. Maybe I could do a talk about it. So I managed to get past the depression and start feeling optimism. And here I am doing the talk. So maybe this is the end of the story. Well, this is a message posted by me on a Slack group in September. I'd had a new idea. It was Wordle related. I could use my existing code, but I didn't need to mention Wordle or link to Wordle. I didn't have to be anything to do with Wordle. And guess what I told myself? It's really simple. It'll be really quick to implement. I had the idea on the 6th of September. I finished coding it on the 29th of October, and I still haven't submitted it to the App Store because it hasn't got a help page, and there's various other bits missing, and I've got work to do. And I don't really think it's ever going to get onto the App Store because I have absolutely no faith in the process. But wait, I may as well tell you about the new game. So here is the puzzle that I showed you at the start. Now, has anybody managed to decode it? Yes! So you already know what everybody else is about to find out. Did you get it right? Yes. So it's possible. Right, so speaking of being ground down, there's some crappy stuff happening in the world. Trans people everywhere are under attack. People are fleeing strife all over the world and not always finding safe harbour. So look after each other. Okay. But anyway, if you want to know more about this game, you'll have to become a beta tester. Scan this PR code. You will need an iPhone. But if you have an iPhone, you scan this PR code, you can become a beta tester, and you can play that game and the Wordlessly game and a Wordle clone. Right, okay. So Claire, does this count as user research? Well, yeah, I mean, up until now, I've had hardly any beta testers, and I really could use a lot more user input, and I didn't do a great job on that front. I've done a lot of guessing about what users might want. And then there's collaboration. I've done this mostly on my own. I probably could have benefited with having other pairs of eyes and other ideas, and maybe they could have stopped me disappearing down a million rabbit holes. But at least if I get some beta testers, that's some form of collaboration. And in case you were wondering, this is the actual solution to the original Wordlessly game. So you can see green rectangles throughout here. This was what that person, and me in fact, had actually guessed when the answer was circa. Those are all the guesses. And if you want to see it again, you can find me later. So, is it a sad ending? This is my son Oscar. Look at him at the end there. Or is it a happy ending? This is also my son, Oscar. So, it's a cliffhanger. This is also Oscar. Will the new game, the brand new game, get me into the App Store? This is a surprise still waiting for us all to discover. You'll have to watch this space. But what does good product development look like? What would I like to be able to do when I'm developing software? I'd like to be able to do continuous delivery. I'd like every single change I make to be deployable to end users. I'd like to be able to work in many more, much smaller steps. And actually, I'd like to be able to do that as part of my continuous delivery as well. I'd like to reduce risk by getting everything in front of the users. I would like to be able to deploy a walking skeleton and test the deployment before I add the functionality. I'd like to be able to deploy a minimally featured product, a minimum viable product, as soon as possible. I'd like to be able to pivot and innovate and change at any point. Because if I've got a low-risk, low-friction development environment, then that does facilitate pivots and innovation. I'd like to be able to find ways of quickly testing all crucial functionality. I'd like to not throw good money and effort after bad and not fall for the sunk cost fallacy. I'd like to get my product in front of users and do some user research and find out if it's meeting their needs and desires. And I'd like to be able to collaborate. Those are the points I hope I've illustrated with this story. So maybe this is the end of the story. Well, very nearly. At the start, I hinted at some kind of inspirational message. I mentioned hope. So how can I send you away on a high? This story doesn't have a happy ending. I mean, technically, it doesn't have any ending because we still don't know what's going to happen with the latest version of the game or the new game. But I'm not holding my breath about the App Store. I've kind of given up on it, to be honest. My life has moved on. But there is still room for optimism. And not that app, but the one you've been seeing repeatedly, has been my refuge. I could always find motivation to work on it. I don't recommend solo Apple app developing, to be honest. It's not a great development environment. But the pain did intensify the joy, and failure is part of the creative process. And when I'm building apps, I do enjoy my work. So I do recommend finding yourself something you can build. Doesn't even have to be something digital. Maybe you want to take up crochet. But creation is a powerful force. This is the podcast that I hosted for a year. There are lots of episodes. There's 27 episodes. Each one is an interview with somebody interesting. John Skeet, I interviewed about coding for fun, which is particularly relevant today, and a bunch of others. This is the report that Mary mentioned at the beginning on trunk-based development, which was published by O'Reilly a few weeks ago. You do have to have an O'Reilly Learning subscription. You can sign up for a free trial just to read that. This is the Quality Code Bootcamp that I'm going to be running on Wednesdays throughout July, starting next Wednesday. You definitely have to have an O'Reilly Learning subscription for that, but if you want to join with me for that, you are very welcome. And these are all of the different ways you can find me if you would like me to help your team improve their software delivery. I also deliver keynotes and workshops and do online training. And that is everything. But this QR code will get you to all of the things I've talked about during this talk, including the 2 puzzles that I flashed up the solutions to. Thank you very much.